Hello and welcome back. Before we get to part 2, Real Talk, please allow us to fulfill our capitalistic duty and plug our Patreon, the Contrarians Supplements.
That's right. For a small fee, you too can help the Contrarians rage on.
We have tiers ranging from just $1 to $10. It all depends on how much content you can handle.
Starting at $1, it's the Travoltis tier, which gets you access to new bonus episodes focusing on a new movie every month, as well as access to the patron chat. Join other patrons in making fun of our opinions.
Moving up to $3 is the Winoni's tier, which unlocks access to our pre-recording notes, our video reviews, and our spin-off show, Contrarians After Hours.
That's a more laid-back space where we talk about other things we've been watching, reading, playing, thinking about. Sometimes it's related to the movies being covered in the main feed, but it usually isn't.
If you want to be part of those patrons who help us shape the show by telling us which movies to tackle, that's when you sign up for the $5 tier, the Embries, and the $10, the Gads.
Finally, all supplement subscribers, regardless of the tier, get access to our archive of special patron projects. Head over to patreon.com/contrarianprime now to join.
Be sure to listen through the end of the episode to find out what's coming up to the Contrarian Supplements this month. Now, it's time for some Real Talk.
Don't dream of madness, Carl. When madness gets you, there's no you left. Just madness.
What if it's too late? I tried to kill myself when I was 13 by jumping off the veranda. Because I'm ugly and I'm abnormal. And my mum's in the loony bin, my sister talks to aliens, and my dad hates us. Even me being here talking to you isn't normal. Look at you. You're old, you have weird scars. And what do you want to be with me for anyway?
All right, Julio, so we're back. Profoundly different may have been a dramatic choice of words, but this feels... The subject matter here, the execution is not unlike P.J. Hogan, but the subject matter here, it feels like it was close to his heart, you know?
Yes. I think it's profoundly different from his previous movie. This and Confessions of a Shopaholic are like night and day.
That is correct, yes.
But this one feels like a P.J. Hogan movie. Shopaholic didn't. Which reminds me, Alex, because it reminds me that after we finished recording the She's Funny That Way episode, it hit me that I was praising, up to a point, I was praising Bogdanovich for doing a movie that was not super ambitious. I was like, yeah, he just went and made just an average romantic comedy. Because of his reputation, because of his history, people were mad that it wasn't another Last Picture Show. And I defended him. But then I was thinking, when PJ Hogan did the same thing with Confessions of a Shopaholic, I was the guy that was saying, well, it's not My Best Friend's Wedding. Mm-hmm. But then I let myself off the hook because I realized that my real problem is not that he made with Shopaholic, that he made a movie that was very vanilla, very just formulaic, what have you. My problem was that I didn't feel that it was a PJ Hogan movie. With She's Funny That Way, I felt that it might have been a very modest rom-com, but I did feel that it was directed by Peter Bogdanovich. With Shopaholic, I didn't feel that it was directed by PJ Hogan. It just felt like, I think I said it on the episode, I felt like anybody could have directed that. Mm-hmm. So when I was watching this movie, when I was watching Mental, from the beginning, that was something that reassured me that this was not going to... It could have been a good movie or a bad movie, but at the very least, it was going to be a PJ Hogan movie. And that gave me some relief because I was like, it's the last movie of the summer. It's the last movie of the PJ parties. It would have been such a bummer if it would have just been another movie that was not what I think is representative of the filmmaker. So whatever score Mental ends up getting from you and from me at the end of this conversation, I think that at the very least, PJ Hogan can stand tall and say, yes, but it's my movie. It's not me adapting someone's book or taking somebody's IP or trying to fit in. It feels like this is really a PJ Hogan movie, and that's, if nothing else, that is a positive in my book.
I agree.
You know who else agrees?
I was about to ask. 44% on Rotten Tomatoes. So, which quotes did you pull in the positive realm, in the affirmative?
All right. Fresh tomatoes from the Rotten Tomatoes website. We're going to start with Debbie Lynn Elias from Behind the Lens, who says, heart, humor, and hilarity, and a big hunting knife. It's great to be mental if it means loving mental.
All right.
That should have been the tagline.
That really should have.
It's great to be mental.
Sometimes love is mental. That's what it should have been.
She's mental that way.
Hey-o.
Next, Tom Keogh from the Seattle Times says, the heart of Hogan's film is in the right place, and Colette is masterful as an agent of anarchy. Toni Collette as an agent of anarchy, Alex.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say she's masterful in this.
Would you say she's an agent of anarchy?
Sure, why not?
Next, Brian Orndorff from Blu-ray.com. He says, hilarious but a tonal bucking bronco. The effort is perhaps best reserved for viewers in the mood for a runaway minecart viewing experience, willing to absorb all the chaos Hogan happily provides. A tonal bucking bronco is how I want to describe most movies now.
Yeah, there are some, like, we talk about the big scene in this that's like, what is the purpose of this? Where you can find a purpose in it that I talked about in Contrarians Corner, and that was legitimate. I'm talking about the group period scene. That's not me trying to say that we don't know women bad. It's just, it was a bit jarring given the rest of the movie. But the whole movie, even if it does have some kind of hard rights that you're like, it has its through line and it has its message that stays constant.
Yeah, and I think, this is kind of an easy out, but the tonal inconsistencies or the tonal shifts are the tone of the movie. So
yes.
I think that very early on, when you open with this lady singing the opening number of The Sound of Music, you kind of know what you're in for. So, I don't disagree that it can be jarring at times, and we'll talk a little bit more about that scene with the menstruation and the white furniture, because I realized I didn't get to make like the biggest point I wanted to make, but it's a point that it's also valid for real talk, perhaps even more so. So we'll get there in a moment. One more. Alex Nicholas Bell from IonCinema.com says, Mental sees Hogan once again utilizing his madcap zaniness and over-the-top flourishes to explore otherwise serious and emotionally heavy motifs. Madcap zaniness.
Yes.
That's his stamp. If it doesn't feel too zany, if it doesn't feel madcap, doesn't feel like PJ Hogan.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, Alex, that you would have reacted to this movie differently if you hadn't watched his previous 5 movies?
Possibly. There's something to this movie. There are things that are very good about this movie. There are things that are not good about this movie too. You know, it would have been funny if I had seen this and it would have had the effect of she's funny that way, where I was like, it's okay. And then I come into it now with all this, for lack of a better term, baggage. And it's kind of lifts up my appreciation of it. Maybe it's, to be honest, PJ Hogan's movies, there's not as much complexity to them as there have been with our Peter Bogdanovich movies. And his movies they're obviously self-referential in some cases, but it really feels like an interesting roadmap this guy followed. Whereas PJ Hogan, no. There's Muriel's Wedding, My Best Friend's Wedding. Yeah, the movies we've done so far, like, you could show me almost all these movies individually, and if you didn't tell me who directed them, I could believe that someone different directed it. The only one is like, this feels like a movie the guy who made Unconditional Love made.
Yes, but I would say the same thing about Muriel's Wedding.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Muriel's Wedding's in that too. So Muriel's Wedding, Unconditional Love, and Mental, I think that would to me be the PJ Hogan trilogy. Obviously not his best movies, but those are the ones that feel the most unique and the most like true to him, or that he's true to, I guess I would say. I don't think he minds, because My Best Friend's Wedding made like $300 million. But you know what I mean, though? Like, we've talked about, it's funny, She's Funny That Way doesn't feel like a Peter Bogdanovich movie, and that's the immediate one I brought into the discussion here. But
well,
yeah, dude, like the Peter Pan and Confessions of a Shopaholic, if you showed me those two movies and said two different people directed, I'd be like, yeah, probably. And in this case, though, like I'm saying, Muriel's Wedding, Unconditional Love, and Mental, they all feel like they have like a straight line going through all of them.
Quitting my job because I think you're mental.
Mental is a shock.
It is not.
It is.
I expect to be schizophrenic any day now, and none of my research mentions sharks.
Yes, and I think that once you know that P.J. Hogan directed the other three, you can recognize some elements. I mean, almost not there in Shopaholic. Like I think I mentioned in the episode, maybe the mannequins doing the applause at the end of that sequence. I think that's the one P.J. Hogan moment in that movie. But Peter Pan and definitely My Best Friend's Wedding and the way that it uses music, I think that was very P.J. Hogan-esque. I think also, I mean, this is not shocking. I'm pretty sure that we both agree that that's his best movie, right?
Oh, man, Confessions of a Shopaholic.
Fuck off.
See, we're going to have a difficult discussion here because this one feels the most real of any of the movies that he's made. It's not that good, though. But yes, for the parts that make a good movie, yes, My Best Friend's Wedding is easily his best.
Yeah, right? I mean, because I think
it's got Paul Giamatti in it.
Yes. Well, but it uses all the powers of him as a filmmaker, I think, are used in the best possible way in that movie.
Yeah.
And everywhere else, there's the good, but it comes with sometimes a lot of stuff that doesn't work. You know, when he's tried to do mainstream stuff, and then when he hasn't done mainstream stuff, you know, Muriel's Wedding, Unconditional Love, and this one. I mean, you just said real. It feels real to him. It feels like real for P.J. Hogan. It feels true to what I think of him, what I think of a filmmaker, just with these big gestures between his characters and just.
I dare say with that script and that cast, there's a lot of folks that could have just stumbled ass backwards into My Best Friend's Wedding, and that same movie could have, and then not completely the same, because there is the use of music, as you called out, and there's some scenes of emotion that are not typical for that type of movie. That I think that's the type of shit PJ Hogan excels in. But that's why I say like real. I forgot to call this out in Contrarians Corner, but as we're talking about My Best Friend's Wedding, it reminded me we get another fucking split diopter shot in this. It's when the kids are making out in like the Shark Tank or whatever. The fucking De Palma shot. I was like, what the fuck? Because we remember how much that blew my mind in My Best Friend's Wedding, and it returns here. But we're not here to talk about My Best Friend's Wedding. Just needed to get that split diopter shot reference in there. So, man, when left to his own devices, he will make some peculiar pieces of business. We both like Muriel's Wedding. You liked Unconditional Love, not substantially more, but definitely more than me. And when it comes to this, do you agree with me that there's some interesting parts to this, and I think there's some genuinely good performances?
Yes.
There are some times where this goes off the rails and it takes a while to get back on, and it's not even that like tonally jarring thing. There's just some decisions made throughout this that are a bit quizzical. And also the Hogs, man, he shot his wad within the first like 70 minutes of this movie. Everything's laid out. So the fact that it's 2 hours, I literally have in my notes, drunk leave Oscar clip. Yikes, there's 20 minutes left in this still. Because when that was happening, I thought, okay, we're about 5 minutes away from the ending of this movie. And nope. There was 20 more minutes that also included a baffling ending that I'm assuming we'll get to. But
well, the ending is like 30 seconds. I think what you're talking about, the final. Yeah. No, what it also includes is 2 musical numbers that I wouldn't take out of the movie. So
Fair.
I think the fat is in the middle, a little bit in the middle.
It's funny you say that, because when we were talking about this, both off air and in Contrarians Corner, that entire sequence with the boy, you don't need it. Like when they're skinny dipping and stuff, and you have kind of the comic mishap of their first time making out and whatnot, but there's parts, you're exactly right, in the middle that bloat it. And that, I guess I'm now processing my thoughts in real time of that's probably why I was fatigued by that point. And so, yeah, the runtime was a bit of an issue for me. Well, let's just start. What do you like about this, Julio?
The raw emotion, which I think is what I like the most in most of his movies. I think that there's it's easy. You can say, right? Like it's an easy slam dunk when you get an actor like Anthony DePaglia and you give him that monologue and you just plop it there in the middle of the movie and that's it. Now it's like, well, that's what I'm going to think about. and you get a few of those, you give that to Liv Schreiber, you give that to Toni Collette, you even give that to the lady that plays the mom. And you get good actors and you get those really earned moments. And that's, man.
Bro, the mom gets a brutal monologue.
Yes. Yeah. I talk about like when she talks about LaPaglia basically date raping her.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is insane. And look, that is a moment where I would have expected, I started to fear that it was going to go off the rails, but it didn't. And it's, I guess,
it's one of the few moments in the movie where like there's actual trauma being revealed, that there's not some kind of joke coming. It just is allowed to sit there.
Yeah. Toni Collette, for all her wackiness, I mean, she is very, I guess, empathetic. She knows how to talk to her in a way that doesn't, even though it gets really silly, I would say 2 minutes later, but in that moment it's taken seriously, and she's, I guess because she's trying to, Toni Collette is being understanding for a character that so far in the movie hasn't had anybody pay attention to her and listen to her. And so that, I think maybe that helps it go down a little easier. But I was afraid when that happened. I was like, oh man, is this the thing that just derails the movie? Because so far it had been so broad and so out there and so very much about being funny, right? And then once you introduce sexual abuse, like 9 out of 10 times, 99 out of 100, I think it just means that, well, you can't just like bring it back to funny stuff, but it manages, it takes it seriously, and it's the way that she rationalizes, there's different, it just sounds like a real thing. Something happens, right? Like this dude, it was their first date or their second date. He gets drunk. She doesn't want to, but they end up having sex. He's forceful about it. And then she is pregnant and he calls her again and they get married. And it seems like a bit of backstory that doesn't feel like it's just like a plot convenience to make other things happen. It's just like, no, it just feels real in the sense that other things in the movie feel real. So that didn't derail the movie for me. I thought that was, and it's really well acted and everything. But there are other things that derail the movie for me, but let's get to that in a moment. I praised PJ Hogan's use of music throughout the summer, and I think that this is another good example. It is one of those things where if you disengage from the movie and you step back, I think that you would start cringing, and maybe that happened to you. I willed myself to get back into the movie sometimes because I knew that it was very dangerous to disengage because then I wouldn't be able to get back in. And those scenes where when they sing in order to rescue Toni Collette, and then at the end, the Edelweiss song, I mean, that was a little easier because it's funny to see LaPaglia sing so badly.
Yeah, the conclusion of that is outstanding.
It's just like the bone tracks.
Yeah. I think it's easier because it's playing it for laughs, but the one in the clinic is very earnest. The way that the girls come out and they're singing, and the mom starts taking in how they're all singing, and it's just basically making her dream come true, right? And that is very potentially cringy if you're not with the movie. And that was at a point where so much stuff had happened that I wasn't really connecting, that the movie could have completely lost me. But I think that he knows how to stage those things, and it rewards you if you're with the movie because the emotional payoff is really good. You get the mom getting excited, you get the daughters singing along their mother proudly and all that stuff, you know. And it's I mean, it's just so fucking cheesy to have all the patients and the orderlies come out to witness this serenade, but it works. If you're with the movie, you're like, hey, that's how you make that kind of sequence. We didn't mention the Contrarians Corner, but also when they visit the neighbor right before the sneak attack with the menstruation, it's they also do a little sing and dance number at her front door.
Yeah.
Where she's like, I remember that racist song, and it's like at first it's just Sandra, then Toni Collette joins, then the girls all come out and start doing a dance. I thought that was really funny. It felt, that's one of the reasons why it felt so much like it was a PJ Hogan movie again, because he just obviously likes using music and musical numbers, musical routines to move the plot along, to express stuff, and he was doing it here. So that's basically something that just carries me through a lot of his movies, just the musical elements. And I think, honestly, it is it's a very messy exploration, let's call it, of mental health and the stigma of not being normal, like not fitting into whatever society has decided is normal. And I think that it hits and misses, but because, like one of the reviewers said, like its heart is in the right place, I think that it's, for the most part, it hits. I really like the fact that one of the sisters does have mental problems, like mental health problems, and they get her help. she gets
scene where the girl with schizophrenia, and the scene where Toni Collette shows Anthony LaPaglia like the level of severity where she's sleeping like in the crawl space. That's a pretty brutal scene too.
Yeah, and it's I put in my notes that the LaPaglia baby face turn. He stops being a piece of shit dad. Just kind of like to tiptoe into something that I think brings the movie down. It's tied into something that I think lifts the movie. The LaPaglia performance is amazing, but the journey of this guy being a piece of shit and then suddenly becoming a dad that cares for his daughters, but then becoming a piece of shit again, and then getting redemption at the end, that wore me out. I think that I needed him to be one thing or the other. And the moment that he went from being what seemed to be a caring father again to just falling back to being exactly what he was before, I was like, come on. it just felt like we were going in circles, and that bothered me. It reminded me a little bit of Muriel's wedding, how we complained about Muriel's dad as a piece of shit, but then at the end of the movie, they try to give him a little bit of a graceful exit.
Yeah.
It felt like the same thing here, except that the character is bigger, gets more screen time, and his apparent redemption takes up more of the movie. And I was like, I was perfectly happy with him becoming a better person, and then that being what he was to the rest of the movie. I don't need him to be a perfect person, but for him to basically regress to how he was before Toni Collette showed up, it just felt like extra drama that didn't need to be there. And, you want to talk about the movie feeling bloated. That was a point where I was just feeling like it was unnecessary. You can still get to the end where they sing Edelweiss without him being a complete piece of shit before. It's even more impressive, I think, if he does it without being coerced. He does it because he wants to make his family happy, and that would have been, better. But that's a problem. Did it bother you, or were you just like, fine, LaPaglia is a great actor, so I'm all in?
Oh no, he's great, but like you're exactly right. Like he wins back, and then because you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube with the story when we find out the story of their history, him and Shirley, is that her name? Yeah. That's a big part. So the fact that the movie allows him to slip again, it's like, oh, okay. Because the ending is satisfying, but it would have been just as satisfying if that didn't happen. If she's just like, oh, I'm back, but here's the fucking asterisk. Here's the caveat. Because it is really funny when he goes up there, and like, I wasn't kidding. I legitimately laughed out loud when he's just, Edelweiss. Like that shit's funny, man.
He's just like staring ahead, dead-eyed.
But you're exactly right. There wasn't a need for another like villainous happening with him.
Yeah, as good an actor as he is, I didn't need that. I was already happy with what we got in the first 2/3 of the movie.
We got the resolution, and then it was like it undid it. It was like, Okay, what was the point of that?
Yeah.
And again, this movie ain't fucking 245. It's not even 2 hours. But I'm glad to hear Julio, the man who came in his pants today when he heard the Russo brothers are going to probably make it a 4-hour Avenger movie. I'm glad to hear that you at least have enough foresight to think that this had a bit of a bloated runtime too.
Well, because I felt it. That's the problem. When you feel it, I think that there are too many characters being serviced. You bring up the whole sequence with the naked slide, and I really like the actress, Coral. I like the character. I think she's well written. I think that she's very funny and very. She feels very genuine. Her reactions to things and all that stuff, but I think that you already had the Toni Collette story and the Shirley story and the LaPaglia story and the Liev Schreiber story. So the Coral story kind of needed to go. You can still show that Toni Collette has had a positive influence on this family without zeroing in on her, on Coral.
And the thing with that whole story is it doesn't feel like there's a conclusion to it. It feels like just pieces of it are thrown in that now I've been thinking about, because I was watching this movie earlier and I've been formulating all of this in real time. Because when I watch this, it's like, what the fuck is this? Like, and not necessarily a bad way. It was just me trying to like get a grasp on the movie. It was a buck and bronco, like we talked about. Yep. And so now I'm reminiscing, and it's like, yeah, her little vignettes, as it were, feel like they really didn't go anywhere. You're right. Just show her instilling confidence in all the girls. Or this movie's about Coral. This movie's about her coming of age. You know what I mean? And everyone else is a background character. You can make this movie about Coral and homegirl, what's her name? Lily Sullivan. She's really good. Yep. But the way the movie's executed, you got to go all or nothing with Coral, and here it just feels like, they're just kind of, here's a couple interstitials. You get it?
Yeah. Her big moment at the end is just she winks at Trout, or Trout winks at her.
Yeah.
It's one of those two. That's the conclusion.
Does neurotypical mean like boring? You're right.
You could make that argument also for the mom. You could say the movie is more about the mom. You just focus it more on her because the mom drives so much of the climax. And so it's actually commendable that he manages to get big moments for so many characters and that it doesn't feel more bloated than it does. But it does feel like it gets a little chunky and a little messy somewhere in the middle. The turn where I honestly felt like I had missed a scene or something, which was like insane. Like I went down to write something. I looked up and they were all, their face were black and they were ready to go kidnap the shark. I was like, what happened? Because it's such an abrupt cut. She is, Coral sneaks into the boat to look for the baby. And then Liev Schreiber walks in on her and then he sits down. And we know now that he tells her what happened. He gives her the backstory of Toni Collette, but we don't see that. And instead it cuts to nighttime and Toni Collette's getting ready to go on this mission with the girls and Coral is there. So it was just very disorienting. I felt like, where's the transition? Why is she there? They kind of explain it in the car on the drive there, but it just felt like it was rushed and abrupt and it just, the movie, so much happens, she gets arrested and like LaPaglia and the sister, the aunt, who had been perfectly cool like 2 scenes prior when they were at the hospital, they come in with the police and the aunt is asking for the dolls and LaPaglia is saying, don't worry, it's not about you, it's just about this woman. And there's just something that doesn't quite work in that middle part of the movie. Is that what I'm going to think about when I think of Mental? Not as much as the good stuff, but it's there, it kind of keeps it from being a smooth ride.
Speaking of good stuff, can we talk about Liev Schreiber?
Can we talk about Liev Schreiber's Australian accent?
It's tremendous. I know I'm not a native, so my thoughts can only carry me so far with that, but I thought he was fucking tremendous. And he's great. Liev Schreiber, I think literally in the time we've been doing this show for the past, 10 years, he's become more of a respected actor, What was that show he had? Ray Donovan.
Ray Donovan, yeah.
I know that's been something that's kind of helped to put him over the edge. Is like, he's a great actor. When you and I have known Ball for a long time, man, we've known this dude's fucking legit. And what's happened with him is he's become a chameleon. Unfortunately, because we don't make movie stars anymore, and there are no movie stars anymore, except like Tom Cruise. I fear, and I hope I'm wrong, that we're never going to get the big Liev Schreiber leading man feature film. But, man, you look at this shit, you look at Goon, you look at, even from a voiceover perspective, of course, he's Kingpin in Into the Spider-Verse, which we did.
Yeah.
And you just look at the work that he's capable of. We did get Chuck, which you and I went and saw together. It's okay.
That's right. That was a vehicle for him.
Yeah, that didn't get much of a release, though. And he is good in it. The movie's failings are not his fault. He's quite good. But I think he's poised to become one of the more appreciated that guys of our era. Like, I would like to think that like 60 years from now, when there's a chubby white fella and a Peruvian immigrant that are, doing some new podcast, they would reflect upon Liev Schreiber as like, oh man, that guy, but God, he was a great actor. And you watch something like this that, honestly, if you want to talk about what's his character's name? Trevor. If you want to talk about the layers of that, adding on to the fact that he's playing a different nationality than he is, this role asks a lot of him. And he's fucking Liev Schreiber, so he delivers. He is, to me, one of the best parts of this movie. LaPaglia is very good, and he may be the MVP of this movie. But I think that Liev Schreiber is excellent. And I still think he's underappreciated, as you can tell.
Not in Contrarians headquarters, but yes, in life in general.
I'm giving him like a verbal back rub over here and just patting him on the back, asking him what I need to bring him. You need some tea? Would you like some lemon with it?
I think that LaPaglia gets the best scene, but Liev Schreiber gets the best character and my favorite scene, because I think that not his Oscar clip, but his first talk with Coral, where I reference the Contrarians Corner. He tells her about life, and his whole thing about how everything is a shark. Mental is a shark. Life is a shark. It's his philosophy is the way that he expresses it is very good. The way
logic's
he
not flawed. It's kind of comical the way he delivers it, but the logic's there.
Yeah, I love that Coral has a retort of like, well, I've been reading about schizophrenia because I might be schizophrenic, and in all my research, nobody mentions sharks. That scene is really good, and he sells it. And like I said, I kept waiting through that initial sequence that's really introducing him, right? We've heard him on the phone, but this is the first time we see him as a character, flesh and blood. And I kept waiting for the shtick to happen. Because, he has the scar, he has the accent, he has the cattle prod. I'm like, all right, at what point does he just push it into the next level of ridiculousness? But no, he stays grounded, and that makes him so much cooler. The way he communicates with this young girl, and he seems noble, and you can tell he says, you remind me of someone. You know what he means, right? He's thinking of his daughter, so he has that paternal instinct. He's instantly won me over. I was like, this guy I get. I think because of a couple of things that you've said, that you might have had more trouble, and I know I did, getting your head around the Toni Collette character. Was that right?
And I understand why they're scared of me. I'm the next step to human evolution. A next step to perfection.
So of Toni Collette, her performance here, she's good. Her character seems a bit unrealistic at times for a movie that grounds some of its folks in reality, like just some of the goofy stuff that we experience with her, and like the idea that she's gonna like fucking have this clandestine operation with these little girls of stealing this fucking shark. But you find out her head is very clouded and very her judgment's not good. And the part where she fucking snaps and grabs Coral. I think she ends up hitting her or slapping her too.
Yeah.
Like, that's really fucking intense. And that would be, of course, her best supporting actress clip. But yeah, she's good. Toni Collette is in the upper echelon of Contrarians appearances. And we've been there for her Academy Award nominated shit. And, she's a great actress. I can't say she does anything in this that is as good as I think she is like in The Sixth Sense per se. But I think she doesn't shine in this. She's just good. And the parts that call on her to act with, all caps, she delivers.
Yeah, I don't think it's a fault of the performance. I think that it's just that character is pitched at such a high level that it's funny because...
It'd be difficult to pull off.
Yeah, but on one hand, you would think, oh, this is the character that's just going to eclipse everybody else because she's so loud and so broad and so intense every scene. But I think that what happens is because she, most of the time... she's pitched at just the one level and she's just like so confident about everything she's saying and she's just such a powerhouse that it actually doesn't impress you as much as the other characters that get to have ebbs and flows, and there are times when they're confident, there are times when they're doubting themselves, and they, the isolated big moments that each character has, they end up being more powerful than Toni Collette being at 11 through most of the movie. It's weird. Yeah, you're right. We've seen so many things with her, and I think this might be my least favorite performance of hers, even though it's not a bad performance. It's just, I felt like it was artificial. Like I couldn't really connect with it. I enjoyed it and I liked what she was doing for these girls, but I was like, this is not a real person. I mean, granted, it's, the PJ Hogan world is enhanced reality to begin with, but she felt like a plot device. Like, oh, now the crazy stranger is going to come in and teach everybody to loosen up and to believe in themselves and all that. And I didn't get like any real emotion from her the way that I got it from all the other characters, which is weird. And by the way, the five sisters, I mean, we single out Coral because obviously she gets the most screen time and she's the oldest, so she has the most going on. But I thought the five sisters were amazing. They were really great. Mm-hmm. They had really good chemistry. They were not annoying. The youngest ones, you would think that the potential for them to just drive me insane would be there, but to the point where when people in the neighborhood would make comments about how, obviously they drove their mom to the hospital, right? Like they were just so out of control that they're bad kids. And I was thinking, are they? I mean, I can see how logically you would think they are, but I actually thought they were pretty charming. So that's a plus. I think that they found really good actresses to play sisters, and they have really, really good interactions. The dynamic in that family is really good. And I like them all five. I was really rooting for them. So again, just one more thing that I felt overshadowed the Toni Collette performance. And Toni Collette is going for it. I mean, it's not her fault, but I just think that the movie set her up to be the least impressive element in it all the way to the end. But I don't want to talk about the end yet, Alex, because I do want to backtrack and talk about the other big thing, the demonstration, like period blood over the white couch. It's a very out there scene, and it reminded me as it was happening. It forced me to. I didn't like it. I didn't like the sequence, but it forced me to try to figure out why I wasn't liking it. And the first answer, the easiest answer, and it is true, is that as documented on the show, I'm sure at least a few times, I just generally don't go for bodily fluid gags. Like they mostly gross me out. And that doesn't have to do with it being women menstruating. It could have been any sort of fluid. But you kind of like pointed it out in Contrarians Corner, right? That he's taking something that is in that society, the society of that neighborhood, that environment, it's taboo, and it would be like an extra transgression to just, it's not that just you're getting my furniture dirty. You're getting it dirty because you're menstruating over it.
Yeah.
So, in that sense, I appreciate it. I get what it's doing, and it's such an act of rebellion that I think it's awesome. But one, it goes on for too long. Two, there's a lot of stuff that's supposed to be funny that I just felt was really clunky. Like people running around the living room and tripping over, and the Sandra running out with like a bunch of toilet paper. It just, I think that you need a lot more finesse to execute that gag.
Yes, or be in a different movie.
But then again, like this movie takes such wild swings.
I was tempted to reference your beloved movie 43. There's a whole sequence in this that's exactly like this gag here.
Is that the one with McLovin? The sequence of McLovin?
Yes, and Chloe Moretz is her first period.
Yes, there you go. That sequence, I think, is more successful at making that point. I don't know if it's more funny, but it is more successful at like driving home the point of like how ridiculous it is for some people to react like, oh my God, I don't know what's happening. At this point, we all know what's happening.
911? Yeah, my friend is bleeding out of her vagina.
Nathan, listen.
Why are you laughing at me?
It's the lining of Amanda's internal organs just spilling out of her.
Oh my God.
That's a good comparison, but I also think that it just gets too unwieldy, Replace menstruation with like any other sort of like bodily fluid here, and it still doesn't work because so it's not that it's menstruation, it's just that the comedy is not well executed. I think it's just clunky, and again, it's trying to do so much because it's not just that. Sandra is seducing the daughter of the neighbor at the same time, and there's just too much going on. So I don't think it works. And it's like right there in the middle of the movie. That was the first time, honestly, as I was watching the movie, that was the first time when I felt that it could end up not being great. Because until then, I was so in tune with everything they were doing. I was happy that it felt like a PJ Hogan movie. I was ready for him to just go all in. I thought it was going to be one of those instances like, and I know you don't like it as much, but like Unconditional Love, where beginning to end, it was very much that movie that he wanted to make. And well, if people had a negative reaction to it, that was just because, well, so be it, but not necessarily because the movie faltered at some point. Do you think, Alex, that this Elizabeth Towns Unconditional Love, or do you still think that Unconditional Love doesn't work?
No, that movie's too much.
You don't think this movie is more too much than Unconditional Love?
It is. But
Okay.
I'm just saying, like, that puts into perspective how too much these movies are.
I would say, my thought was that it puts into perspective how Unconditional Love keeps it together more successfully than this one, as wild as it is.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that there's no extended gag about menstruation on white couches, and there's no puzzling final sequence / joke involving fiery farts. Talk to me about that ending, Alex.
I don't know. I thought like I thought I rewound it because I thought like no, that wasn't what I thought happened. Like she must have dropped something or something. Like, she threw like fire on it. And then I rewound it and it's Toni Collette farting into a Zippo and it shoots a big flame out of it.
It's not even implied. Like you see it.
Yeah. And there's a big fart noise.
I don't think there's anything in this movie or in the 5 previous movies of his that we watched that would prepare you for that.
No, no. I want to know like what the battle was like, because he wrote this.
Right.
So I guess the idea is just it's so ridiculous. That's how it ends. I think there's something romantic to the fact of them dying together. And for her to just be like, I lived, and then farts. It's like, huh?
Is it? I can't imagine this being what happened, given that this was not. At least it seems like it was a movie that he made on his own. But can you imagine them setting up an advanced screening, just like a test screening, and people are mad?
Needs
like
more farts.
No, all the cards are like, why did they die? Why did the couple die. And so the studio gives him the notes and they're like, nope, they need to live. And he can't say no. So instead what he does, he pulls Wes Craven with Nightmare on Elm Street. He gives them the ending they were asking for, but in the shittiest possible way. So he writes this really bad scene where literally Toni Collette walks up and says, I lived.
And then toots.
And there's fire, and then she runs like a maniac, laughing.
She committed arson via methane.
And yeah, she's going to prison if they catch her.
that last legitimate 60 seconds, like that may have knocked the movie down an entire star for me.
Yes. I haven't even thought about ratings right now because I was grappling with my feelings because you're right. You go from like a pretty big high, which is LaPaglia singing Edelweiss. That could have been your last memory of this movie.
Oh, dude, that was so awesome. The last line of the movie should have been that woman saying, they're just like the Von Trapps.
Perfect.
It ties back around to the very beginning of the movie.
How do you feel about them being dead, though? Like, let's pretend for a moment that final reveal is not there. And the movie ends with Liv Schreiber and Toni Collette drowning together. Isn't it too much of a downer?
It is a downer, but you can pull it off. Here's what you do. You have Shirley dump Barry, Anthony LaPaglia, and then we cut out that whole thing where they get back together and then he's an asshole again.
Yeah.
They die here. And when you cut that out, you free up like 5 to 7 minutes where you can do like a funeral sequence here for Toni Collette and Liev Schreiber. And at that is when Barry and Shirley are kind of reunited, and you know you get a really good impassioned scene from Anthony LaPaglia declaring his love and like just really a very genuine apology. And I want you back, and like it would mean so much for me if you'd be at the launch for my campaign. And then she's like, charmingly is like, okay, yes, but there's one thing. And then the movie ends with the Edelweiss thing. You can pull this all off. It can be a downer, but you can still pull this all off because also the way that Liev Schreiber and Toni Collette are talking to each other before it all goes to hell is like that they still like care for each other, and you know they've been through this trauma together, and they weren't able to face it together, and that's what drove them apart. So like there would be something romantic about them, you know, dying together here in the end. You could pull it off. This movie's not interested in that though. This movie's interested in exploring some interesting topics, some deep topics, some dark topics, but it's not interested in really committing to any of it.
I like your rewrite. I will rewrite your rewrite just to say that she doesn't ask him. Like I said earlier, it needs to come from him. So he apologizes and he tells her, please come to the thing. You don't have to stand next to me, but I just think that this is a big moment for our family. So I think that you should be there just because, you know, we started this together. We need to end it together. And then he surprises her when she's there. He surprises her by starting to sing Edelweiss. And then the girls who knew about it, the girls join. And so she's witnessing it as a surprise. And then maybe she gets on stage at the very end to finish singing. And then you're like, all right, LaPaglia, you're redeemed. You're a Kennedy now. It's so weird also, Alex, because why would you show her, Toni Collette, as alive and not have her like then run and get in the car with Liev Schreiber? That's what I thought was going to happen. But if he's not there, then does that mean that he died and she survived?
That's the way I took it.
That's an even bigger fuck you to the audience.
For real.
Like, we liked him. I don't think the movie expected us not to like him. You know, if she's going to be alive, then he needs to be alive. I was surprised. Man, they set up the knife. I was waiting for her to pull the knife so she would cut the ropes.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the one thing.
We didn't have good enough producers on this, man.
They just don't do whatever you want. That's the thing I would ask PJ Hogan. Ever run into him?
Jocelyn Morehouse, his partner from Muriel's Wedding, was on this too.
Oh, you think it was her idea?
They got to the end and it was like, we're already here. Let's just figure out the easiest way to wrap this up. But someone rigged a flame to come out of Toni Collette's ass.
God, I don't understand either, Alex. I don't know. It didn't feel like it was that kind of movie.
It didn't at all.
Like that final sequence is to shock you, just to, like literally to fuck with the audience.
So my main takeaway is there are moments in this movie, there are sequences in this movie that are good, even though, like I said, you could easily cut it out. The water park sequence with the trout and coral, that's a really good like sequence of film put together, and the emotion there is very like identifiable and something familiar, and something that I think almost anyone who was once a teenager can relate to. It doesn't belong in the movie, probably not. Liv Schreiber's fantastic. Anthony LaPaglia is fantastic. The fucking Anthony LaPaglia Oscar scene in this, which would probably also be the best original screenplay scene, is excellent. But like as a whole, this movie just feels so disjointed, just a mess.
How do you feel when Toni Collette assaulted the bitchy girls at the donut shop?
Again, something should have like tipped these girls off of like, I think she means well, but there's she's got a screw loose.
I reacted as I'm like, oh shit, right? But then they get in the car and everybody's laughing except Coral, and I thought, okay, maybe Coral's onto her. But then then Toni Collette has a one-on-one with her, and it was not that Coral was concerned about the violence. It was more that she was concerned with, I don't think that I'm as special as you think I am. Yeah. Which is a very teenager thing to say, but it made me wonder. What is the movie saying? Is the movie saying that it's okay that she assaulted those girls, which honestly were horrible people? But I don't know. I don't know how the movie feels about the Toni Collette character in a way. I mean, I think that it's cool that it shows her so much compassion, and like I said, she has a force for good in big parts of the movie. But I guess in the reality of that the movie has created, I'm not sure how she fits like long term. And you're right, she ends the movie, if not dead, committing arson.
Yeah,
being on the run. So even the most out there movie, that we did before, even Unconditional Love, when it's all over, I can tell you where every character fits. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. I can tell how they got to the end of the movie and where they go after and how they fit in the world, theirs and ours. And that's not something that happens here with one of the main characters, perhaps the main character, right? Like that. She drives so much of it that it just feels, again, it's weird that the biggest character, it turns out to be the one that works the least for me. So I'm with you. That ending really soured the experience, and I just have to force myself to go back and think of all the stuff that I really liked.
Yeah, and there is stuff to like, but overall, I can't say that I would necessarily recommend this movie. Like a C-. This will probably end up getting the same score that Unconditional Love gets on Letterboxd for me, of like the 2-star review. The biggest difference being, I would absolutely tell someone to watch Unconditional Love with this. I would just be like, man, it's got a good Liev Schreiber performance, but it's too disjointed. Unconditional Love, I don't think is a good movie, but it has a clear idea of kind of what it wants to be. Is that a movie that succeeds? I don't think so. You do to a certain extent, but I still think it's so insane it's worth seeing. This, I don't think it knows what it wants to be, and that causes it to consistently like fail with these different comedic sequences or what have you. But Liev, LaPaglia, even Toni Collette, like I said, has some really good moments. And Lily Sullivan also, for what she's called on to do, is good. So C- for me. 2 stars will probably be the review I give it on Letterboxd. What about you? Have you had enough time to consider your star rating?
I've been going between 2 and 2.5 stars, and really, it's gonna be 2.5 because that extra half a star is for all the stuff that I really like. Like I think and I may have said this in other reviews / ratings this summer. There are 5-star sequences in this movie. Most notably, the La Paglia Oscar clip, the Liv Schreiber shark philosophy scene, and even like you just called out, and you're right, the water slide stuff is unnecessary but very evocative, very well shot. It really captures what it needs to capture. It's just that it's something that ends up being almost irrelevant. And I think that you could say that the movie doesn't know what it wants to be. I think you could also say that it wants to be too many things. And that's the problem. Because if it had maybe narrowed its focus a little more, then that would have pushed it to where it's better. And it would be 3 stars, Alex, but that ending knocks it down half a star. That would be the thing that I wouldn't know how to explain it to anybody. That's, if I recommended the movie, we're like, stop it after Edelweiss. Please skip that last bit. Still, unlike Peter Bogdanovich, PJ Hogan may make more movies. If his IMDb is being truthful, he may make at least one more. And I would rather that movie be more in the vein of this, Unconditional Love, and Muriel's Wedding than Shopaholic or
Pan.
Peter Pan or My Best Friend's Wedding, even though I love My Best Friend's Wedding, and I thought Peter Pan was fine. I think that, it had its ups and downs. But the main thing is, if he's going to make another movie, I want him to make a movie that is kind of like this, with the big swings and the really weird stuff. And ideally, yes, he hits the perfect balance that he did in My Best Friend's Wedding, where you get his sensibilities, but you also get it's just more controlled, and I think that's at its most powerful. But that might be one of those things where, the perfect storm, it might not ever happen again. But if that's not gonna happen again, then I don't want him to keep trying to, to go back to doing something that's more mainstream. He might, and of course he has every right to, if he's like, well, if I want to have a career, I need to make the type of movie that people buy tickets to, and studios can sell. But in a selfish way, as a member of the audience, like, I want him to make PJ Hogan movies. Mm-hmm. And we might get to see, hopefully, a few more in our lifetimes. It's been a while since Mental, but that's something that I learned a while back, like years and years ago, is that the information, the official projects that you see, that's not all of it. Like, these people, filmmakers, I was always wondering, like, how are they paying their bills? If yes, people like Spielberg and Tarantino, Scorsese, whoever, the big names, obviously they don't have to worry about regular income because they already have it made. But your standard filmmaker, writer, like, how do they survive? Is it just the residuals? But the thing is that there's also a lot of work that they do that's uncredited. They still get paid for it, but they just don't get credit for it. So I'm assuming that that's how somebody like PJ Hogan can still make a living, even though his last movie was released in 2012. So it's just a matter of, eventually they get something that gets put out again, and then the rest of us hear about it.
In any experiment, there's test mice and control mice. Control mice are marked in some way and sent off into the normal world as comparisons. Colin knows control mouse.
So, as we draw the final PJ party to a close and our summer event to a close, Alex, we said it. I think it's easy to surmise that we agree that My Best Friend's Wedding is at the top of the PJ parties on our lists. Do we have the same at the bottom? Probably not.
No, this might be my bottom.
I have to say Shopaholic is my bottom.
You're a hater.
Listen to the episode. I have good things to say about it, but in the PJ Hogan curve, it's not there. It's just not it.
Work for hire.
Yeah, work for hire. It's this the thing called love. Just no passion there. So let us know how you guys experience the PJ parties and the Bogdanov films. This is it. We're about to go back to what passes as regular life here on our main feed. thank you, all of you, for sticking around. I know it's been an unusual summer, I think, for Contrarians fans. I think that we've had some hardcore people that have been listening to every episode, whether they watch the movie or not. We might have had some hardcore people that have been watching along with us, which is even more impressive, especially if you were also taking in the stuff that we covered on the Patreon channel. Mm-hmm. And then we've had the people that have been like, in and out. Like, that's the way that I listen to podcasts. I generally, especially if it's a movie that I know I'm going to get to at some point, I'll just skip the episode and I'll just focus on the movies that I've watched. So unsurprisingly, stuff like My Best Friend's Wedding, Last Picture Show, like the big ones, Peter Pan even, are the ones that are designed, I guess, to keep listeners happy. But then if you also stuck around for stuff like Mental and Noises Off, then bless your heart.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's been a fun ride. I'm really happy that we pulled it off. And I couldn't even tell you what our next episode is. Like, we're recording this ahead of time, like we've been doing for half of the summer. But I know that it's not directed by Peter Bogdanovich or by PJ Hogan. That much I know.
Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But that was the final PJ party. I'm sure we'll have some retrospective thoughts over on Patreon. And speaking of which, what can patrons expect in conjunction with this episode?
Well, bonus episode for this month, the month of August, is a conversation about the movie Take Out, which Alex and I have already recorded. It is part of patron Jordan Mance's top 100 movies of all time, number 16, if I remember correctly. So pretty high up there. It is our first Sean Baker movie covered anywhere on the show, and had a pretty good talk about it. So check that out. We also have a dual video review. Alex and I are joining forces to watch Invasion of the Body Snatchers, not the original, but the remake with Donald Sutherland. We're going to be watching that together and recording our experiences on video, as we've done with all the other dual QVRs. So check that out. And then we have Contrarians After Hours, the spin-off show where we talk about other things. Alex, what are you bringing to Contrarians After Hours this time?
As Julio said, we're recording way in advance. We just wanted to get ahead of schedule. Julio's got some travels coming up, and it's summer, so we're just trying to get these in the can while we can. So by the time this actually comes out, it won't necessarily be as hot of a topic, but released this past weekend in movie theaters was the horror film Longlegs, which I made the trek to my local movie theater to see. And it's getting some pretty divided reviews and thoughts on it, and I have my own to share. So I'll be talking about the sleeper hit. Made a lot more money than its projection said it would, and I will be taking a victory lap for that because I was told there's no superhero fatigue, and it's just a generational divide on how we consume media. That's the problem. So in addition to my victory lap, I'll be talking about my feelings on the film. Julio, what are you bringing to After Hours?
Alex, I'll just do a victory lap because you went out to the movies. Anytime that happens, I am just elated.
I went to the movie theater twice last weekend. I went to 2 different movie theaters over the course of last weekend.
Alex Mattis is back, like PJ Hogan with Mental.
To be fair, they're both within walking distance of my house. There's 2 movie theaters within walking distance, and one of the movies was Saturday Night Fever, which is one of my all-time favorites.
There's still movie theaters. You're still out there.
I made the effort. You're right.
Yeah. I made the effort as well, Alex. I've been making the effort regularly this summer. I just want to talk about the Paramount Classics, the Paramount Summer Classics, Paramount Summer Series. I'm not sure what they call it, but that's something that would you call the Paramount an art house? The Paramount Theater that we have downtown?
No, I wouldn't call it an art house. It's a historical theater.
There you go. Okay, so it's not your standard multiplex. It's just it's an old-fashioned theater. We've talked about it before. We've mentioned either going to movies there. You've definitely gone to concerts there.
Yeah, it's a multi-purpose theater.
Yeah, but it's really nice. And every summer they do. They have just like 4 months of them showing classic movies, and it's great. If I try to go and watch things that I haven't seen yet or things I haven't watched in a while, and so I've gone a few times now, and I may go a couple more before it's all over. But I want to talk about the movies I watched, and also about the experience that is going to the Paramount and going to the Paramount at this time during their own summer event, because it's definitely special and it's impressive that they've been doing this for so long. And I just kind of want to tip my hat at all the people that make it happen, because it's a really good thing that they're doing. And it's one of those things that I love about Austin. Like, I know we complain about the city a lot, but also there are some really cool things that happen. And that feels very Austin. Like the Paramount and their summer series is something that I would always point out as like proudly. Yes, that's Austin. So I'm going to praise the Paramount, and Alex is going to praise Longlegs. Is that what it is? I just know it's a Nicolas Cage movie.
Yeah, that's what people say. He's in it for like maybe 10 minutes total.
That's all he needs.
Praise, yeah, some aspects of it.
All right,
Julio. The PJ parties have concluded. Our parents are pulling up to pick us up, so I think it's time to get out of here.
Let's go.
Welcome to our end credits.
Or as we usually call them, our perennial plugs.
We start off by giving thanks to the Festive Years, who provide our opening and closing tracks. They kick us off with Last Stand and take us home with Summer of 99. Be sure to head over to thefestiveyears.com for any and all Festive Years needs.
Our friend and fellow podcaster Hans Rothgieser is the man behind our logo and all the art you see related to our show. Reach out to him and let him know how much you like that little tomato. His email address is mildemonios@hotmail.com and his website is mildemonios.pe. That's MILDEMONIOS. You can also check out his podcast Nación Combi about Peruvian current affairs and Marginal about economy. Hans, thank you for all your support.
For those interested in the regularly absurd world of professional wrestling, Joe and the boys over at latenightgrin.com have you covered. Tell them the Contrarians sent you.
And we like to close with special thanks to our social media team of Zoe Perez and Coriari. Each of the social media accounts we mentioned in the introduction look as good as they do because of their work.
So that'll do it for this episode of The Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong, and we will catch you next time.
How much money he makes a year.